Hello, Sean Eddings here. Welcome to the MicroCapClub Member Spotlight. In these interviews, we'll showcase many of the talented members of MicroCapClub. Today, we have Dean Trottier, a private investor. Dean, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a private investor.
So my background started, I think probably in high school, which is another lifetime ago. I was always a worker, but my family I didn't grow up in a house that talked about business or finance or politics or anything like that. Both of my parents grew up quite poor, so I got a strong work ethic, and coming from a blue collar house, I went and became an auto mechanic, believe it or not, to start. As I jumped from one trade to another to earn more income, I started saving. My dad walked me down to the bank, made me talk to, I think it was a financial planner or something like that. And I finally got the compound interest thing. And so once I realized that, it was just like save, and slowly working through the steps. I don't know if it's always upward, but the steps of getting better mutual funds, moving to index funds, and then eventually moving to individual securities, I eventually gravitated to microcaps. Once I picked individual securities, I was reading all of the Buffett and Lynch and Ben Graham and everything like that. Everyone goes through that on their journey. And I was really good at regurgitating quotes and talking about picking stocks, but I was like horrible at actually picking stocks and analyzing businesses. So when I did eventually make the leap, I started a blog, and I started that simply because I had no mentorship. I had no guidance. There was none of my friends that were really into picking stocks. Everyone thought of it as a casino. So I started a blog to get myself out there, to network, and eventually it was Chip who reached out to me. I think I was on TV, or he seen my blog or something like that, or I was in a newspaper article or something. Anyways, he reached out, and I consider Chip a mentor. He's been pivotal in my development as a microcap investor. And as I read more and kind of figured out my style, I just got more and more. I got smaller and smaller companies, more obscure companies. The liquidity wasn't as big of a deal. Of course, when you're first starting and you're dealing with small sums of money, it's a lot easier to get a position in a really illiquid company. So yeah, that's my journey from know nothing to microcaps.
And so we were talking about before we got on the interview, we were just talking about how you're a full-time private investor right now. Can you just talk about that transition from going from working a normal job to getting to becoming a full-time private investor?
Sure. Yeah, I would say as well in that journey, some of the pieces that I didn't mention as I switched from one trade, I switched from a mechanic to a heavy equipment mechanic to earn more money. As I went through my apprenticeship, I moved up into management inside of the business I was working in. At the same time, I was researching individual companies. I started getting involved in the MicroCap Club. And as I developed my managerial skills, I got a promotion and ended up running 3 little businesses inside of a bigger facility. And so I was responsible for 3 income statements and safety and quality of these 3 very different businesses. It also gave me an opportunity to learn about leadership. And as I did that, I think I was fairly good at it. I don't know, my performance reviews were all fairly good. I realized I'm not really cut out for the corporate world. It took a lot out of me, and maybe it's a little bit of just an oppositional personality where I didn't like being told what to do and build someone else's empire. So as I developed in my career, I simultaneously was developing my skills as an investor. And I just wanted to hit that escape velocity as soon as possible. And I think there's a thread on the MicroCapClub about, when to make the switch full time. And there's all sorts of, everyone's different. So you got to do what works for you. Some people have, a year of savings, or 10 years of whatever basic expenses aside. I needed it to happen as quick as possible, just because of the stress that day job was putting on me, as well as trying to do the investing on the side. It was just a little too much. So I hit escape velocity as soon as I could. I made the switch in 2018, and I've been doing it full time since then. And it's been, I don't know, with the COVID and everything, it's definitely been a different 5 years than I would have expected. But we're coming out of it okay so far, I guess.
Good to hear. And so another thing that people might not know about you is that you're a prolific power lifter. Are there any things that you would say that you have learned through the powerlifting that's helped you maybe as an investor?
Powerlifting, prolific. That's not a word I expected you to use. Struggling would be another one. But I guess with any sort of personal development, whether that's getting stronger, getting faster, losing weight, whatever, reading, learning another language, playing an instrument, it's all about the unsexiness that no one sees. It's about the reps that you put in the continuous work you put in over months and years, with not necessarily immediate results showing, and then you can demonstrate them later. I think the continued discipline is something that I had to learn through investing that transferred into powerlifting, where you put in, it's kind of like you're depositing something in the bank slowly, and then a year later you actually have something. It takes a lot of work, because with lifting, whether that's powerlifting or just getting stronger in the gym, you get all of these sort of newbie gains, they call it. So you can, your squat can double in a year, literally. And now I'm at the point where it takes, a year, 2 years to make a PR, a new personal record, or whatever. And sometimes you'll see it in a related lift, but not in another lift. And there's also a little bit of another piece is much more analytical, where you're digging on what exercises should I do, how many reps and sets, etc., to make that jump or increase that personal best. And investing is very much like that, where you're doing all of this digging, no one sees you, reading these reports, and then it's so nuanced, right? So you get all of this information, and then you say, I think this is what the business is worth, but there's no absolute number. There's nowhere to go to find that exact number. That is all subjective from you. So at least with powerlifting, you get like, I made the lift or I didn't make the lift. And so I did like that with lifting.
Yeah, it's the one difficult thing about investing is the feedback loop is so long, but the input is very similar to, like you said, music or powerlifting, lifting, or really any other thing that necessitates skill that's being developed over a long period of time. But yeah, it's the feedback loop. It's same thing with me. It's just so long to figure out. Oh, am I right?
Yeah, and there also is luck, right? I think some of the progress you make when you first start lifting is you're just getting exposure, so you don't necessarily have to be methodical with anything. And investing, how much is luck versus skill? Who knows? There's a lot of survivorship bias in our current winners, right? And we don't know how much of that will be replicated, I guess. And it's very hard to make some pattern recognition from that stuff.
Yeah. So how about tell us a little bit more about your investing strategy? Sounds like you're more of a buy and hold.
Yeah, I would say I'm a long-term, I call myself long-term fundamental, but I don't have a specific type of company I stick to. I will be a person that will own anything from one of those disruptor companies to a net, as long as I can understand the business, understand the the eventual value or current value and apply the discount. I'm Canadian, so the majority of my companies are based in Canada, although a lot of them do have business all over the world. So it's, they're listed in Canada. And, the venture exchange is got a bad reputation, and I hope it stays that way for a bit, because that's where I fish generally. I will own companies on the big board, but more than likely the big winners have started on the venture as some sort of obscure little company that no one's paying attention to. And they don't become giants. They become just bigger, small companies. I think Ian coined that term. That's a good way of putting it.
Are there any thoughts or ideas with relation to business or investing that you've really been thinking about lately?
No, I think something that I was thinking about this the other day, a lesson that took me a little bit too long to learn is if there's a specific type of strategy or a specific industry, is why is that working, and will that work in the future? And I think some of the more obvious ones are commodity type business. If oil is going, as oil continues to climb, it's easy for oil companies to do well. But I definitely think it's hard for investors. You're a product of the time you kind of mature in. And so if you mature with a certain type of company working, it's easy to want that. And if that changes, you need to change with it if you want to continue to play the game or continue to outperform. And that's what I've been struggling. I've been trying to reconcile a little bit, is how much of the past is going to, how much of the things that worked in the past are going to work in the future, and how much do I need to worry about that, I guess. A different, going from 1% inflation or negligible inflation for how many 5 to 10 years to even just some inflation, some more typical, could be very different for many businesses. So I think that's something for me to keep in mind. Not that I'm going to be able to forecast anything like that, but just to understand how some of those businesses may be affected and things like that.
So you've been a MicroCapClub member for quite a while. Do you remember how you I'm guessing maybe Chip was the one who introduced you to the group. What are some of the thoughts that you have on MicroCapClub, and how has it benefited you?
Well, MicroCapClub's been a big benefit, and yeah, Chip got me involved. I remember the company I applied with, I had mentioned I think I mentioned it on my blog, or I'd mentioned it to Chip in person, and I wrote it up with an application, and I got it. It's been beneficial. I mean, I'm one of those people that owned Expel. I think we all, we've done well, regardless of the last couple of months. But I think I wouldn't have been introduced to that company without MicroCapClub. But I definitely helped. I had conviction to hold through some of the more difficult periods, as especially through the lawsuit, and then some issues with they had some product quality issues, all temporary. But having the MicroCapClub and having members that are heads and tails above me from an intellectual standpoint helped me immensely. So I recommend it for sure to anyone that asks me if they should join. I say, yeah, just join, and make sure your write-up has some, not just here's the company, here's why it's statistically cheap. Maybe do a little digging into management and the board of directors and such.
Well, thank you. Dean, are there any places, I think you have a Twitter handle, so maybe if you could let us know about that, and I'll share what your display name is on MicroCapClub. And what about your blog? You must still have that.
I do. Yeah, it's a transfer to Substack. I'm very infrequently active on Twitter, or X, under the tag Petty Cash. And there's 2 underscores between Petty and Cash, because at the time there was someone else had the handle. So, and for MicroCapClub, and my Substack is pettycash.substack, I believe. Again, fairly infrequent. I try and post some things, updates on how I am digesting certain information about the companies I own or follow. So it helps journal the entries as well, get some people talking, maybe willing to give me some input on how they feel about the company as well. And then on MicroCapClub, you just follow Sean Iddings and send him a direct message if there's any
any issues, right?
Yeah, any concerns.
Yeah, Ian will say like, "Oh yeah, if compliments come to me,
Yeah,
to Ian, and then all the, bad stuff comes to me."
Yeah,
Sean.
any criticisms, anything inappropriate or whatever, just can go right to Sean.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us, Dean.